The vast open plains stretched out like a giant green carpet. The wind whispered secrets through the tall grass. It was on these endless lands that a special group of people, the Comanche, lived. But what made the Comanche so mighty, so feared, and so successful? It all began with their deep love for horses. These weren't just animals to them. They were partners, friends, and the very heart of their way of life. Imagine a child learning to walk, but instead, a Comanche child learned to ride. From the time they were very small, even before they could truly run on their own 2 feet, they were placed on the back of a horse. They grew up with horses, understanding their movements, their moods, and how to communicate with them without a single word. This made them some of the best riders the world has ever seen. They could cling to a horse's side at a full gallop, making them almost invisible targets during a fight. They could pick up arrows from the ground while riding at top speed, or shoot with incredible aim, all while their horse thundered across the land. This skill wasn't just for show, it was essential. The Comanche lived a life that needed speed and agility. Their horses were fast, strong, and could travel for many miles without getting tired. A Comanche warrior and his horse moved together as if they were one creature, a blur of motion across the prairie. This amazing connection allowed them to do things that other people simply couldn't. It gave them a huge advantage, not just in everyday life, but in every single challenge they faced on the Great Plains. Their mastery of horsemanship was truly the first step in how they came to rule such a large part of the American West. The Comanche's amazing riding skills weren't just for showing off, they were key to survival. The most important thing for the Comanche was the buffalo. These huge animals provided everything: meat for food, hides for clothes and teepees, bones for tools, and even dung for fuel. But hunting buffalo was a very hard and dangerous job, especially before horses arrived. Hunters on foot had to be very sneaky and brave, often risking their lives to get close enough. With horses, everything changed. Imagine a vast herd of buffalo, thousands strong, grazing peacefully. Then a group of Comanche riders, silent as ghosts, would appear. They would work together, guiding their horses to surround a part of the herd. The horses, trained for this very task, knew just what to do. They would gallop alongside the thundering buffalo, getting so close that a warrior could almost touch the shaggy beasts. A Comanche hunter, riding bareback or with a simple pad, would use a bow and arrow or a long spear. With incredible balance and skill, they would aim for the buffalo's heart or lungs, making sure the kill was quick and clean. The speed of the horse allowed them to chase down the fastest buffalo and to escape if a wounded animal charged. After the hunt, the horses also helped carry the heavy loads of meat and hides back to camp. Without their swift and strong horses, getting enough buffalo to feed their families and keep their tribe strong would have been nearly impossible. The horse made the Comanche the best buffalo hunters on the plains, which in turn made them a powerful and well-fed people. This close link between horse, hunter, and buffalo was a big secret to their success. While horses made the Comanches excellent hunters, they also turned them into fearsome warriors. Before horses, battles were often fought on foot, moving slowly and without much surprise. But when the Comanche learned to fight from horseback, it was like magic. They became incredibly strong and hard to beat. Imagine a group of warriors on foot, trying to defend their camp. Suddenly, a storm of dust appears on the horizon, growing bigger and faster. It's the Comanche, riding their horses at full speed. They didn't just ride into battle. They danced with their horses, moving in ways that no enemy had ever seen. A Comanche warrior could hang from the side of his horse, using the animal's body as a shield while still shooting arrows with deadly aim. This trick made them almost impossible to hit. They used spears and bows and arrows with great skill, all while galloping. Their horses were so well trained that they would respond to the slightest touch or even a warrior's thoughts. This meant the warriors had their hands free to fight. They could charge quickly, strike hard, and then disappear just as fast, leaving their enemies confused and scared. This way of fighting was new and very effective. Other tribes and even the soldiers who came later found it very hard to fight against the Comanche horse warriors. Because they could move so fast, the Comanche could attack faraway enemies and then be back home before anyone knew what had happened. They could also chase down enemies who tried to run away. This made them masters of the plains, able to protect their lands and take what they needed from others. Their skill in battle on horseback was a huge reason why they became so powerful and ruled over such a vast territory. The Comanche were not just great riders and fierce fighters, they were also very smart about how they used their horses. They knew that a good horse was like a treasure, and they took great care of them. They understood that to keep their advantage, they needed to be clever in battle and when traveling long distances. When preparing for a fight, Comanche warriors would often bring several horses. They wouldn't just ride one horse into battle until it was tired. Instead, they would switch horses during a fight, jumping from a tired horse to a fresh one without even slowing down. This meant they could keep fighting at top speed for much longer than their enemies, who usually only had one horse. Imagine trying to catch someone who keeps getting a fresh burst of speed. This trick often wore out their foes, making it easier for the Comanche to win. For traveling far across the plains, the Comanche also showed great wisdom. They didn't just gallop their horses for days on end. They learned about the land, finding the best paths, the hidden springs for water, and the good grazing spots for their horses. They would travel in a way that saved their horses energy, knowing when to rest and when to push forward. They often led their spare horses, letting them graze as they moved, so they would be strong when needed. This careful planning and smart use of their horses allowed the Comanche to cover huge amounts of land very quickly. They could surprise enemies far away, trade with distant tribes, or move their entire camps to new hunting grounds with ease. Their ability to manage their horses, not just ride them, was a secret weapon that made them powerful rulers of the plains. They truly understood that a warrior was only as strong as his horse, and they treated their horses with the respect they deserved. With their amazing riding skills, their hunting prowess, and their clever ways of fighting, the Comanche did something truly remarkable. They took control of a massive stretch of land on the Great Plains. This huge area was known as Comancheria, and it was bigger than many countries in Europe. Imagine looking at a map of the American West. Comancheria stretched across parts of what are now Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Colorado, and New Mexico. This wasn't just a place they lived. It was a territory they actively ruled and defended. They were like kings of the plains, and their horse skills were the crown jewels that gave them this power. How did they do it? Their speed and mobility, all thanks to their horses, meant they could travel quickly across vast distances. If another tribe tried to hunt buffalo in Comancheria, the Comanche horse warriors could appear almost out of nowhere to stop them. If settlers tried to move into their lands, the Comanche could launch swift attacks and then vanish into the horizon. This made it very hard for anyone to stand against them or settle on their chosen lands. They didn't build big cities or put up fences. Instead, their control came from their ability to move freely and quickly anywhere within Comancheria. They knew every stream, every hill, every good place to hide, and every path, and their horses allowed them to use this knowledge to its fullest. They could gather many warriors for a big fight, or send small groups to scout and raid. Because of their horse skills, they could enforce their will over this huge area, making sure they had the best hunting grounds and keeping their people safe and strong. For many years, the Comanche and their horses were the true masters of the southern Great Plains. Because the Comanche ruled such a huge land and were so good with their horses, they became a force that many others feared. It wasn't just other Native American tribes who worried about them. Even the Spanish, Mexican, and later American settlers felt a chill when they heard the name Comanche. Imagine you are a traveler or a settler trying to make a new home on the plains. You've heard stories, whispered around campfires, of warriors who rode like the wind, who could strike without warning and vanish just as fast. These stories were about the Comanche. They were known for their fierce bravery and their unwillingness to back down. When they went to war, they were truly terrifying. Other tribes, who had lived on the plains for a long time, often tried to avoid fighting the Comanche. They knew that a battle with Comanche horse warriors usually meant losing. The Comanche's ability to ride into battle with many fresh horses, to dodge arrows by hanging off their saddles, and to shoot with amazing accuracy while galloping made them almost impossible to defeat in open combat. They would often raid other tribes for horses, food, and captives, further increasing their power and spreading fear. Even the soldiers from faraway governments, with their guns and cannons, found it hard to fight the Comanche. The soldiers moved slowly in big groups, while the Comanche were like quicksilver, always moving, always surprising. They could attack supply lines, steal horses right from under the soldiers' noses, and then disappear into the vastness of Comancheria. This made them very hard to catch and even harder to beat. The fear of the Comanche horse warriors was a real thing, and it kept many people from daring to challenge their rule on the Great Plains for a very long time. With all this talk about Comanche horsepower, a big question comes to mind. How did they get so many horses, and how did they keep them healthy and strong? The answer lies in a mix of clever raiding, smart trading, and exceptional animal care. The Comanche were masters at horse raiding. They would travel far to steal horses from Spanish settlements in New Mexico and Texas, or from other tribes. These raids were not just about getting more horses. They were also a way for young warriors to show their bravery and skill. A successful horse raid brought honor and wealth to the warrior and his family. They became so good at it that they often had herds of hundreds or even thousands of horses. Owning many horses was a sign of a rich and powerful Comanche family. But getting horses was only half the battle. Keeping them was just as important. The Comanche were expert horse breeders and caretakers. They understood how to breed strong, fast, and sturdy horses that could handle the harsh plains environment. They knew which mares made the best mothers and which stallions had the best speed. They also understood how to care for their horses. They would let them graze on the rich grasses of the plains, moving their camps to find the best pastures. They protected their herds from wolves and other dangers. They even kept special war horses that were trained for battle and treated with extra care, often kept close to their owners' teepees. These war horses were like members of the family, valued above almost all else. The Comanche knew that their way of life depended entirely on their horses, so they gave them the best care possible. This dedication to their horses ensured they always had the mounts they needed to hunt, travel, and dominate the plains. Behind every powerful group of warriors are great leaders, and the Comanche were no different. Their famous chiefs were not just brave fighters, they were also smart thinkers who knew how to lead their horse warriors to victory and how to make important decisions for their people. These leaders helped shape the Comanche into the dominant force on the plains. One such leader was Buffalo Hump. He was a fearsome warrior and a very clever strategist. He led many raids and battles, often against the Texans who were trying to move into Comancheria. He was known for his ability to plan surprise attacks and for his fierce determination. Under his leadership, the Comanche often outsmarted and defeated larger armies, showing how effective their horse riding tactics could be when guided by a wise chief. Another very important leader was Pita Nocona. He was a chief of the Noconi band of Comanche and was famous for his bravery and his powerful leadership. He led his warriors in many successful buffalo hunts and battles, always ensuring his people were well fed and safe. He was also the father of Quanah Parker, who would become one of the most famous Comanche leaders later on. Pita Nocona's strength and vision helped the Comanche hold their ground against many enemies. These chiefs were not chosen just because they were strong. They were chosen because they were good at leading, smart in battle, and cared deeply for their people. They understood the power of their horse warriors and used that power wisely. Their names are remembered in history as the men who guided the Comanche through their golden age, making them the true lords of the Great Plains. Their leadership, combined with the skills of their horse warriors, made the Comanche unstoppable for many years. For a long time, the Comanche seemed unbeatable, masters of their vast Comancheria. But even the strongest empires eventually face challenges that change everything. The time came when the Comanches' rule on the plains began to fade, and several big reasons led to this sad end. One of the biggest problems was the buffalo. The Comanches' entire way of life depended on these animals. However, many new people including hide hunters from the east, began to kill buffalo in huge numbers. They didn't just hunt for food. They hunted for sport or just for the hides, leaving millions of buffalo to rot. This terrible waste meant fewer and fewer buffalo were left for the Comanche to hunt. Without their main food source and materials, the Comanche grew weaker and hungrier. Another big change was the arrival of many more settlers and soldiers. As more people moved west, they brought bigger armies with more powerful guns. The U.S. Army learned how to fight the Comanche better. They started hunting the Comanche even in winter, when they were usually safe. And they attacked their camps, taking their horses and destroying their supplies. The army also built forts and roads, making it harder for the Comanche to move freely. Also, new sicknesses brought by the settlers, like smallpox and cholera, swept through the Comanche camps. The Comanche people had no protection against these diseases, and many of them died. This made their numbers smaller and their communities weaker. Finally, the Comanche were pushed on to smaller and smaller pieces of land called reservations. They could no longer roam free with their horses or hunt the buffalo that were disappearing. It was a very hard time, and slowly, the mighty Comanche horse warriors, who had dominated the plains for so long, had to give up their old way of life. The last great fight for the Comanche was the Red River War in 1874, after which most Comanche people moved to reservations. It marked the end of an amazing era. Even though the Comanche's long rule on the plains eventually ended, their amazing horse skills left a lasting mark on the history of the American West. Their story is a powerful example of how one group of people, with their deep connection to an animal, could shape a whole era. For nearly 200 years, the Comanche were the main power in a vast region. Their ability to ride, hunt, and fight on horseback changed how everyone else acted on the plains. Other Native American tribes had to learn to deal with the Comanche's strength, either by making peace, trading, or trying to avoid them. The Comanche's raids and control of trade routes influenced who went where and what goods were exchanged across a huge area. When Spanish, Mexican, and American settlers arrived, they quickly learned about the Comanche's horsepower. The Comanche slowed down the movement of settlers into their lands for many decades. They made it very dangerous for anyone to cross Comanche without their permission. This meant that the maps of the West, the routes people took, and even the pace at which new towns grew were all affected by the presence of the Comanche horse warriors. They were a major reason why parts of Texas and other states were settled much later than other areas. The Comanche also taught other groups valuable lessons about horsemanship and living on the plains. Many people, even soldiers, learned about tactics and survival from watching or fighting the Comanche. Their legacy isn't just about battles, it's about showing the world how strong and resourceful a people can be when they truly master their environment and their tools, in this case, their beloved horses. The story of the Comanche horse warriors is a vital part of the wild, untamed history of the American West, a reminder of a time when the thunder of hooves meant the lords of the plains were near.